Morning, Pete, North Las Vegas. Got my two LR308s out this morning that we're going to take a look at. I had these out last week in some 20-degree weather. The rifle in the back ran fine. I had to turn the gas up a couple of clicks, but after that it ran fine. And this identically built rifle, with one exception, which we'll get to, I was having a lot of problems with it. So I'm going to try to figure out why one ran fine and why this one didn't. So both of these rifles are using Wilson Combat Tactical Hunters, 18-inch, 11 1/4 twist rate, and this is 416R stainless, which still retains some magnetic properties and can still corrode, but it's going to take a lot longer than like a 4150 steel barrel. 416R was specifically formulated for the firearms industry for gun barrels, and my understanding is it's a little bit different than your standard 416 in that it has a slightly lower sulfur content, but the primary difference between 416 and 416R is the heat treat and hardening process. So 416R is stainless, not stain proof. And as I was just mentioning in the previous clip, it does retain some magnetic properties. You can see that the magnet still sticks to it, even though it's considered stainless. So even though 416R still corrodes, it just takes a lot longer to do it. So why pick 416R stainless over like 4150 steel? There seems to be a lot of evidence that supports that the 416R machining processes can give you a more accurate barrel. So slower corrosion and a little bit more accuracy. The downside to the stainless is it's not going to last as long. And before we get too far into this, I'm just going to say I'm not a metallurgist. I'm not a mechanical engineer. So we're going to keep the discussion on metallurgy kind of light. Forgot to mention in the previous clips that the Tactical Hunter 18-inch uses a rifle length gas system. First thing I took a look at when I got the rifle back home was the gas block area. I was looking for signs of escaping gas anywhere between the gas block and the barrel. I checked to make sure that that wasn't loose, that the set screws were still snug, which they were. I checked the gas tube area. And let's see if we can get up there. Anyway, I checked the gas tube area back here, looking for any kind of staining or blow-by. There was like little to nothing there. On this style gas block, the rifle speed, let me get a light in there real quick. Sorry about the camera work here. You can see that it has an open-ended gas block. I don't know if you can see that yet. Right there, you can see that shiny bit. That's the gas tube sticking out of the front of the gas block. And there was nothing leaking out there. There was no staining, no blow-by. So after taking just a good visual look at the gas block area, I was pretty satisfied that I wasn't losing any gas there. Next thing I checked was the gas key on the bolt carrier group. Put a little wrench on here and make sure those are still snug, and they were nice and tight. Gas rings on the bolt look good. But now we're going to get into some things that I did start to notice. So after I got home, taking a look at both rifles, what I realized on the rifle, this is the one that worked fine out there. And what I noticed was it took a lot more force on the rifle that was acting up to unlock the bolt with the charging handle. On this one here, the one that was acting up, I really had to pull hard on that charging handle to get the bolt to unlock. And enough force to where I'm thinking, I'm new to LR308s, but I'm still thinking, man, that's a lot of force. So I tested my good rifle here, and it seemed to take about half the force on a charging handle to get the BCG to unlock. And then just experimenting around, I stuck my finger in the back of the bolt, and I can unlock that bolt very easily with just my finger. And you can see how little pressure I'm putting on this thing. And all I got holding the two halves up is that empty round. But that's how little effort it takes to unlock this BCG in this and this barrel extension, and locks right in with little or no force at all. And like I said, on this one here, the Odin Works, when I tried to unlock it with my finger, and that's after I got all the oil out, like right now it unlocks pretty good. And it locks up good, but I'll show you why. So what I discovered on the Odin Works was the back of the bolt lugs in this area here was getting peened and developing an edge, a sharp edge. And when I stuck something along the back side of it, it would get hung up. So I think the reason this was having so much trouble unlocking with the charging handle was the back of this bolt. These bolt lugs were getting hung up on the barrel extension. Now, just as an experiment, I took a needle file and just kind of took the hammered edges off of this bolt and stuck it back in the receiver, and it was fine. It was unlocking again with my finger, no real hang-ups. Ended up taking less pressure than the rifle that worked out there. And this is the WC that came out of the rifle. And you can see there's a little bit of nitride wear, a little bit of shininess on the edges, but there's nothing that got hammered or curled over or peened. So I don't know if there's maybe a heat treat problem with this bolt, and I just ended up with a bad bolt, or maybe there's an issue with the barrel extension. So I'm going to take a look at that right now with the bore scope and see what the back of the lugs on this barrel extension look like compared to this barrel extension here. Okay, so this is the rifle that was working, and if you look at this side of the screen here, you can see the muzzle side of the lugs. I'm not going to show you each and every one. This is the one that was working. There's a little bit of oil and stuff in there that kind of misleading, but if you look at the lugs, I don't see anything that would indicate an issue. And like I said, this is the rifle that was working, so. All right, well, let's take a look at the one that wasn't working. Okay, so this is the rifle I was having problems with. And these lugs actually look better than the one that was working. I've looked at all of them. I'm just going to show you guys a couple of them just so you get an idea. But yeah, there's no issue with any of these lugs. That looks a little bit of wear going on there, but still nothing that I would consider egregious. So anyway, I'm satisfied at this point I don't have a barrel extension problem. Okay, so we're looking at the Odin Works, and you can see this area here has been peened. Now this bolt probably has less than 100 rounds on it. And that's not just nitride being wore off. That's getting hammered. And like I said earlier in the video, what I did to this particular bolt was I took a needle file set and I smoothed all those out. And there were some of them that were worse than the one I just showed you. But I got them smoothed out enough to where once I got it back into the rifle, it was unlocking fine. So I'm pretty sure at this point that that's what the issue was. And that's why the rifle was needing more gas and was having trouble locking back on the last round and just wasn't behaving correctly, was because of the amount of friction and opposition that this bolt was causing. And like I said, at this point, I'm pretty sure that's what was going on. Okay, so let's talk about nitriding a little bit. It's basically a case hardening process. It can be ammonia salts. It can be carburizing type nitride. There's different ways to do it, but it's a case hardening process. And it should be about 20 to 50 thousandths, generally speaking, as far as the amount of case hardening on the host metal, on the parent metal. So me taking this wore out needle file, and if you look at this needle file, you can see that the edges are wore out. Being able to, after just 2 or 3 swipes on this bolt, start smoothing the back of it out. Like I said, we're back to a heat treat or a case hardening issue on this particular bolt, in my opinion. And So that's where we're at. So am I going to reuse this bolt after it being hammered and peened by the barrel extension and me taking a needle file to it just to see if I could get it to unlock smoother, which it did? No, I won't be reusing this bolt. Since then, I've gone out and bought another Wilson Combat. So what's the difference between Wilson Combat and Odin Works? They are identical with one exception, and that on the bolt itself, the extractor for the Odin Works is 4340 steel, and on the Wilson Combat, he specs S7 tool steel. Other than that, there is no difference. They are both 9310 bolt material. They are both 8620 carrier material. So the only difference is the extractor. Okay, so I didn't just throw this brand new bolt in here without doing a head spacing check, so we'll might as well talk about that, see how we got all the stuff out real quick. Depending on who you talk to, you're going to come up with different head spacing numbers between head spacing manufacturers, Climber, Forster, and who knows who else. And on Climber, you're also going to see a difference in numbers between 7.62 NATO and 308 Winchester, where Forster just says, nah, they're all the same. So in this particular case for head spacing, what I decided to do was take an average of no-goes and average them all out between Forster and Climber. And what I came up with was 1.6363, and the closest gauge I had was a 1.636. And they all passed head space using that dimension. Now the other thing about Climber, as soon as this jet passes, before we were rudely interrupted by the Air Force, Climber gives you a cutout for the ejector and a firing pin hole. Forster thinks you don't need it. You can just take your whole bolt apart. So we'll end this video on this final note. I have some strong suspicions that the unlocking issue was in fact this bolt, nothing to do with the barrel extension, and we talked about why. But I do have one ace up my sleeve. When I purchased my rifle speed adjustable gas blocks, I seem to remember that an 897 was the shortest plunger that he was offering at the time. So in addition to swapping out the BCG, I'm also going to put a shorter plunger in this gas block. So let's verify that this is 0.887 before I put them in there. This plunger is right on the money. We'll check the other two real quick. This plunger comes in at 0.880. This one is a little bit short, which is fine with me, because this is going to be the one that goes into this problem child rifle. That's the one I just pulled out of the rifle, and it comes in at 0.897, so it's 10 thousandths longer than the one I'm going to stick in there. Okay, so we got the shorter plunger installed. Got our brand new bolt carrier group. So one thing left to do, and that's get this thing out there and see if we solve the problem. If it still ends up doing the same thing, then I'm going to revisit the gas block. I'll probably pull it all the way off the barrel and start looking for obstructions or anything that might not be machined right in the gas port area. Okay, Pete, North Las Vegas, over and out.